In this video, I'm going to show you how to add lettering to your resin projects. Using a project that I did 9 years ago, I'm going to dust off the molds and the castings and show you how I did it. Back then, I didn't have the video capabilities, and so I'm going to have to recreate them for you today. See, after the Second World War, hot rodding took off. The car that they chose was the 32 Ford, affectionately called the Deuce. They were cheap, they were easy to hop up, but the only downside was at the steering wheel, the steering wheel in the hot rods were the old 32 steering wheel, and it wasn't very pretty. So they adopted the 1940 steering wheel, which was a very pretty wheel. But the problem is the horn button still had that old Ford logo on it, and it didn't say what it was, a Deuce. So I decided then and there to make Deuce horn buttons. Here they are, and here's how I made them. Here at Knob Soup, we recast vintage steering wheels, restore, mold, and cast dashboard knobs, escutcheons, and rubber items for antique, vintage, and classic cars. Here's an array of those dashboard knobs that I did years ago. This is a sample of all the ones I've done, and I'd like to point out a few that I'm honestly kind of proud of. The nice thing about doing these horn buttons is the fact that I wasn't locked into doing a specific color for a client, or didn't have to match another knob on a dash. I could literally go crazy with colors and styles and lettering styles, because that was my background. This is a sample, and these are some of them. Here's one. This is a little Deuce Coupe. You don't know what I got. This is one that I added swirls into it. Here's one that is a gray background with a blue oval and Ford Deuce in it. This is a nice one. I like this one. This same mold can be used on different styles. This is the same mold. It didn't work out as well because this isn't as bright, but it still says Ford Deuce, and it's the same mold as that gray one. Here's one that is a modern typeface. It would go well with a real techno-advanced Deuce, maybe with a small block Chevy in it or something like that. Here's one that says, oh, here's an interesting one. This is my clown horn button. Anyway, you used to be able to get out of a Cracker Jack box what were called Winkies. And what they would do is if you moved the card, it would blink at you. It would wink. And I thought it'd be kind of neat if I could make a horn button that said Ford, and then it would blink and it would say Deuce, so you could move it back and forth. And so I made this as a sample to see whether it would work. And then if it did work, I would go have Ford and Deuce done in lenticular printing. But the thing is, I found out is as soon as you filled this with clear, you lost the blinking effect. So it didn't work out, but here's the horn button from the idea. Here's another one. This one says Bow Tie Deuce. All of these horn buttons were done on a graphics program on my computer. If you want to add text to your resin projects, look up your local trophy shop and take your text down to them and have them make you an engraving. They can do it. You can ask them to set it at a certain point size. Just make sure that the text is in the center of the panel so you can put the stripes down on the left and the right-hand side and then add the silicone to it. Before I go any further, I want to talk about the Ford logo. I'm not licensed to use that Ford logo. So therefore, I've never sold any of these horn buttons with the Ford logo on eBay or to a private individual. They were for my personal use as a challenge to see whether I could do it, and they now reside in my collection of horn button knots. The horn buttons that say Deuce without the logo Ford have been used and have been sold on eBay. The first thing you need to do is to decide what kind of text you want on your resin project. Now, I made mine all in a graphics program on my computer. And when I got it done, I printed it out and sent it down to my trophy house, an engraving house. And since they charge by the panel, and each panel is 4.5 by 8 inches, I decided to use as much space as possible with the different typefaces and the different styles. So for this exercise, we're going to make a Ford Roadster horn button. Now I'm going to make some score lines on this engraving using my father's square. Now we'll just do the top and bottom. Next thing I'm going to do is take some styrene. This happens to be a half rounded .40. I'm going to glue them down on both sides. Okay, we're now going to mix up some Rebound 25. I don't need much, so we're going to only do, it's 22.9. So we're going to do 22.9. And then when it's fully mixed, I put it into the vacuum chamber to alleviate any air trapped inside the mix. Now the next step is to lay down a nice layer of silicone over this art. Okay, I'm going to let that flow. Now we're going to put a nice clean piece of acrylic over the top and push it out. Now we're going to put a weight on it and let it sit for 4 hours. Now that sufficient time has passed for this to cure, I'm going to take it apart. Okay, there we have Ford Roadster. So I went and scored this so it had a little score line on it so I could cut it. So that's what I'm going to do now that I have a new blade in my X-Acto knife. All right. Now we'll do the second line. All right. Let's pull away the excess. So as you can see, Ford Roadster came out very nice. At the same time that I made the 1.25 by 3/4 Ford Roadster type, I did a blank one with the same size, and it will be the one that will go on top of the horn button. I'm going to use the panel that I have no lettering on it. It measures 1.25 by 3/4, and I have two of them. I have one that has no lettering on it and one that has the Ford logo and Roadster underneath it. And I'm going to take the one that has no lettering on it and put it on top of that horn button, pressing it down, putting Vaseline on it to keep it from sticking when I pour the Rebound 25 into it. Okay, the next step is to measure out how much silicone that I'm going to need to cover this horn button. So I picked an old one and I can measure that, and it says it's 170. Half of 170 is 85. So we're going to actually move it up to 90. That way I kind of guarantee that I'm going to have enough. Okay, we want 90 part B and 90 part A. Zero this out again. And now we want 90 of the B. And we're going to put them in to a larger cup because when we put them in the vacuum chamber, we don't want any small little air bubbles. Now we're going to put it in my crock pot oven and let it cook for a couple hours. Crock pot heater has done the job and has cured it a lot faster. We're going to take it out of the mold here and see what we've come up with. Is get rid of that, remember that sheet that we put over the top of this? That's what we're going to pry out when we put that Vaseline on it. Now what that does is it now allows us to put in that one that we cut and made. So this is the one that we put on the top here. And now we want to find somewhere I laid it down. And as soon as I find it, it says Ford Roadster on it. And now we're going to put it into that same place that other plug came in. Now I made it the same size, so it should fit right in there, nice and snug. Okay, it looks pretty good. It says Ford Roadster. Now we're going to marry this to that common bottom. So we put the two halves together, secured it with rubber bands, and let's start mixing up the color. What we have here is 28B and 33.12. And we're going to put the B side, we're going to use, actually, I want to make this horn button a bright red. And I'm using UVO red because it has UV protectorants in it. Let me put some gloves on. That's going to be a real super bright red horn button. And I'm mixing this back and forth and back and forth because if you don't, sometimes you'll get a soft spot and you'll know it when you try buffing it because it's just not cured. And now we're going to add the A side to it. Okay, this now goes into a third cup just to make sure that it's totally mixed together well. Now roll this around.
These stacks here make a longer chimney. The resin collapses and will draw down, and if it's too close to your original, it'll literally go into and damage your original. And because I don't want to have any bubbles in my horn button, or any little voids, I'm casting this under pressure, somewhere around above 50 pounds. Several hours have passed, so let's take the mold apart and see what it looks like. Now, we're going to have to take and sand down that ridge right there. It's going to be a really nice horn button. Now we're going to push out these and see how my 9-year-old mold held up. And they held up really nice. Now, in order to finish this off, I just need to cut off the chimneys. And the reason why you have the chimney there is if the resin shrinks down below that, it's going to protect the mold. So other than the final sanding, polishing, and then laying in some paint, I think it's going to be gorgeous. And I'm now going to clean it up. I'm going to start, because what it has a little bit of flashing. All right, start off with 400. Now I'm going to literally jump right down to 1,000. So let's put 1,000 grit on it. Smooth it down even more. Okay, the next step, now that this has been polished, okay, now we're going to fill this with black. So here it is. Now I use to wipe off the paint with business cards, like my business card. So I'm going to use a couple business cards to wipe it off with. Thank you for watching my video. If you found it entertaining and informative, leave me a comment. I review them every morning with a cup of coffee, and when I can, I respond. Also, if you like it, subscribe, and I'll make more videos. Thanks.